Good afternoon and welcome to the first of a stream of a WATRM. What is WATRM? What are they really meaning? So Freedom Media WA are going to bring you a series of recent news articles that mainstream media have covered, but we're going to come from the angle and talk about the message that they're not really wanting you to know. We've seen over the last 3 years that mainstream media have changed the way in which they report stories. They certainly have moved away from one of the core charters of what journalism should be about. And I've said here from the outset of creating this platform that journalism should never be a government narrative. And we're finding more and more news articles are containing a particular narrative with a particular flavour that you're being asked to accept. There is no other choice other than vanilla, but here we're going to talk about different issues and talk about WATRM, what they really meaning. I'm going to talk to you about a story that was released the other day on the ABC, the Australian broadcaster, and it's talking about a very interesting precedent at law has been set, I guess, by the McGowan government via mainstream media. Why do I say via the McGowan government and mainstream media? Because the public interest in this particular story should be such that Channel 7, Channel 9 and Channel 10 should be reporting on this story, because the precedent at law that's been set is a very important precedent that people should know about, but the influence of the government-sponsored mainstream media, even to some extent the ABC, although Premier McGowan doesn't have the same extent, has changed. It's going to involve some security guards. I'm going to just switch over very soon, and I'm going to talk you through, I'm going to play you the footage and how the ABC reported on this particular case. This case, this was reported about 4 days ago by the ABC, and it relates to a patient who was stopped leaving the Royal Perth Hospital. Let's have a look.
This patient wants to leave Sir Charles Gardner Hospital. Staff don't want him to go yet. Security officers are...
Okay, so first thing that you can see just there, so the patient wants to leave, leaves the hospital, and the hospital staff don't want him to leave. And I'm just going to back up just a little bit, just to the beginning. Apologise that, and you can see. So here the patient is walking forward. He has his right arm held behind him by one of the nursing staff. I want to make it very clear that this is not an attack on nursing staff because they face very, very arduous conditions in the hospital environment setting. But you have a patient here that's wanting to leave. He's not, but looking at his demeanour, he's not being aggressive to the nursing staff.
Gardner Hospital, staff don't want him to go yet. Security officers are called. They bring him back.
There you go, 3 security guards running out. So the hospital staff have called a code black. In hospital speak, that is where they have an aggressive patient that's causing a particular threat risk to either other patients, nursing staff, or in some instance himself. Now, in terms of context, he was admitted to hospital. He'd had a big night out on some alcohol. He has a shoulder injury, and the alcohol has reacted with the medication he was taking with the shoulder injury. So he's wanting to leave because he's woken up after he has been in hospital for some time. He wanted to go out for a cigarette. That's what he wanted to do.
Inside, but he resists, and as the group falls to the floor, one of the guards suffers a fractured ankle. Questions have been raised about the legality of the whole process.
Doctors and hospitals.
So you have here, you have Perth criminal lawyer John Hammond, that Mr. Hammond there, he's looking at what is a transcript. So and anybody that's had any proceedings in a court matter as a legal representative, he can get this transcript, and it's word for word what the judge said, what he said, what the defendant said, what the witnesses said, what the nurses said.
Hospitals may believe they have a duty to reel in a patient if he or she leaves the hospital.
So a very important statement that Mr. Hammond, John Hammond, has made there, that nursing staff feel that they have a duty to reel in a patient. And there's no denying that particular duty. But I would say the root cause of this particular issue, with such a significant precedence at law set that mainstream, that's Channel 7, 9 and 10 are not going to tell you. The root cause failure here, in my view, and what it really means is the hospital administration have not provided adequate training and understanding for the risk that potentially may be involved to A, nursing staff and B, security staff.
When they're requiring medical attention, the fact of the matter is the patient's free to leave the hospital, full stop.
That is quite simple. The fact of the matter is that the patient is free to leave the hospital, full stop. Let's have a look. You can just see the frame is paused. Look at the amount of force that's being applied to this patient.
Was charged with causing grievous bodily harm to the security officer.
How many of those security guards have gone hands-on with that patient? Somebody at law that has been deemed free to leave.
The case went to trial in the District Court last year. Judge Linda...
Now, I just want to say in relation to this matter appeared in the Perth District Court in October 2022, so it is recent, and it's taken from October 2022 when this person was exonerated, and this is hence the reason the WATRM. It's taken October, November, December, and we're almost near through January before the ABC actually report on the precedent at law that this case is set. Let's hear from Judge Linda Black, and let's have a listen to what she found.
Black highlighted the broader legal framework. He was unlawfully brought back into the hospital, and after force was unlawfully applied to him, he was then unlawfully detained and put onto a stretcher and kept in hospital overnight.
How many times do you see the word unlawfully? He was unlawfully brought back to the hospital. Force was applied to him unlawfully, and then he was unlawfully detained. The facts of the matter in relation to this case is once he was brought back onto the stretcher and kept in hospital overnight, what they really mean is he was heavily sedated to a condition that he wasn't able to leave because they drugged him up.
The jury found him not guilty. Hayden Borden, who used to be a security officer at Royal Perth, says the judge's...
Now, what they also don't mention there is Hayden Borden, that used to be a security officer at Royal Perth, is now a lawyer here in Perth, Western Australia. He would very well understand, so I don't know, I will surmise and make an assumption here that perhaps whilst he was studying law, that he was earning an income as a security officer at Royal Perth. A law degree is not something that happens overnight, and whether it's happened in his previous days, but he would have an understanding and he has the interest at law.
Comments will provide relief for guards who often wonder if detention is necessary.
There were occasions where even the medical staff weren't really confident that the person needed to be detained. They were just erring on the side of caution, but that in itself was concerning.
Nobody's suggesting hospital staff or security officers were acting with malice.
And nobody is suggesting that hospital staff were acting with malice in this particular case. Judge Linda Black, she actually said in this issue here that the prosecution case raised concern about the, and it was held in the absence of the jury, that this was, the use of force was predicated on the right to actually detain the hospital staff. She said there was no right to detain, therefore there was no right to use any force at all. And she did say that nobody, this is a quote directly from Judge Linda Black, said no one was deliberately trying to breach this man's accused human rights.
But security officers have told the ABC they believe clinicians need better training.
So what they really mean there, so you have security guards are throwing the nursing staff under the bus. So I've said the root cause analysis, in my view, it comes back to the hospital administration. The duty is on the employer to provide the adequate training to clinical staff as well as the security staff on how to deal with these particular Code Black issues. And I know that there's a comment coming in talking about Anita Marie saying about nursing staff in emergency hospitals. Again, this isn't a direct attack at the nursing staff, but patients coming in even under a mental health condition, which is something that Anita is talking about, where a patient is formed, that's completely different to what we have here. Where a formed patient, they will try and stop that person from leaving the hospital. This man was not a formed patient. This man was a voluntary patient admitted to hospital.
They're also worried about the legal implications. In response to questions, a health spokesperson has
So apologise there.
security officers have told the ABC they believe clinicians need better training. They're also worried about the legal implications.
What they really mean, they're worried about the legal implications. If this man, having just been through a district court trial, and let me tell you that a district court trial for a matter of this nature, grievous bodily harm, probably the third or fourth most serious offence that you have, willful murder, manslaughter, grievous bodily harm. It is a very serious offence, and it would have cost significant money to have defended his position where he had the basic right to leave from the get-go. So now if this man makes a complaint to the security staff, hence the reason they're talking about here, they're worried about the legal implications of this, then and who's throwing who under the bus? Let's continue watching.
In response to questions, a health spokesperson has said the department takes the safety of all those working in the health system very seriously and appreciates that security officers sometimes face challenging situations.
Now, there's no denying that working in a hospital environment, when patients come in under the influence of drugs, when they come in under the influence of alcohol, that they can present a significant risk, particularly if they're in a drug-induced psychosis, to hospital staff as well as other people in waiting rooms. That's absolutely not being questioned here, and it's an accepted part of the very difficult challenges that nursing and security staff have. Having said that, the underlying principle here is at law that you still have your basic rights need to be considered of what is lawful in terms of detaining a person and what is lawful in terms of applying the use of force to that person.
The spokesperson says equally important is the safety and well-being of our patients.
Absolutely. It is equally important, the safety and well-being of the nurses. So I'm just going to switch back to this one here. That is definitely a consideration there. And as held by Linda Black, Judge Linda Black, one of the comments that she did say in the transcript was nobody was allowed to touch him. Now, you'd think that the hospital staff would get that particular issue right, and they've got it drastically wrong. And I also think the underlying principle here in terms of the precedence of law is that in order for the charge of grievous bodily harm with the fractured ankle to the security staff to have been applied, you would be looking at a fracture, a break of significant impact, that if he didn't receive medical treatment, that guard would have had long-term serious implications, hence the severity of the charge. Now, at some point, this matter would have been considered by the prosecution before it goes to the district court, i.e., does the man have a lawful defence? And this is an issue that we're seeing more and more come up in relation to lawful defence. Who decides the success of a lawful defence? Should that be police or should that be the courts? Now, I would argue that the criminal code avails a number of things, in this case the incident of the defence of accident, and any defence, in my view, should be that decided by the courts, not the police. The police need to consider what the possible defences are in their investigation, but they don't proceed in terms of a case because they think that a defence may apply. So and what we're seeing lately, not only are mainstream media talking about stories and not telling you the implications of this particular issue, we're seeing the police are starting to cherry pick between whether they think the matter might not proceed in a court simply because a defendant has a lawful defence. That is a determination for the court. And the reason I say this, and this particular precedent having been set, is of so significant impact because I saw this firsthand and experienced it firsthand here, also in Western Australia, and this dates back to November 2021, when they started busing children into a COVID vaccination clinic, where I covered the report of that incident. I'm going to bring you some footage of that now. I'm just going to take you back and just have a listen of this.
Issue the instruction to manhandle people. Is that an instruction from centre management?
Need to leave for now. Police have been called, so I'll just ask you to leave.
They're manhandling
And you're standing around listening to propaganda. The children are being injured.
Now have a look at this. Have a look at how this person here, his name is Stephen, he's gone in there to talk about and raise awareness. Now his delivery, he's vocal. He's not abusive. He's not swearing. He's trying to highlight to people that are you actually making an informed decision in relation to what's occurred. But this is the response of the security staff. Moments before this happened, you heard me ask the security guard, do they have the ability to use force? And what they really mean is no, they don't.
Okay.
humanity. Why do you touch people like that?
Because we have evidence that children are being injured. We have evidence. Children are being injured. No, you can't come in.
Why touch me?
You can't come in.
You can clearly hear in relation to that stream, you can see, I'll just back this up a little bit again, just to see how he was released by the guards. He's frog-marched out of the hospital and then and pushed away. Now you can see the blood on the arm of the security officer there, the female security officer, and there was force applied. Stephen had a clipboard in his arm where he was talking about, he had the data, he had the facts of what was actually occurring, and that was blood that had come from him in terms of the force that they were using in that struggle.
We have evidence that children are being injured.
That's all he was doing. You can see him in the background there, standing there just saying, yes, he's saying it vocally, yes, he's saying it loudly, but he was not aggressive towards security staff. Now, in relation to this, I also experienced the manhandling of the security staff, as you'll see here.
Evidence. Children are being injured.
Why touch me?
You can't come in.
Take your hand off me. Take your hand off me.
Okay, so I just want to say there in relation to that, so I was down there reporting that particular day on my own. I had the camera set up on a monopod and I'm holding the mic in one hand, and the reason the camera is shaking around to the extent is because the security guard, as you can see here, is repeatedly pushing me in the chest and grabbing and clutching at my camera. You can see the guard just coming in here.
You can't come in.
Take your hand off me. Take your hand off me.
You can't.
Take your hand off me.
You can't come
Take
in.
your hand off me. You damaged this camera gear.
But you
Take
damaged
your
to us.
hand off me.
Now, the purpose of this stream is to talk about the importance of precedent at law that has been set in relation to the here. You've now seen a man where it's been determined that he was unlawfully detained by hospital staff, and as a right of that, of course, he wanted to go out for a cigarette, and of course, he was trying to break free to go out and do what he wanted to do. We've certainly seen over the last 2.5 years, we've seen a number of patients as a result through this pandemic that have gone to the hospital in a calm and reasonable manner to seek treatment, but they have been turned away in an aggressive manner by security staff at a hospital simply because they're choosing body autonomy. And when complaints have been made, and I've had reports, a number of reports very similar to what I've personally experienced, and we're finding that the judicial arm of the McGowan government, the police, have been weaponised here, saying that the matter won't succeed because they believe that there is a possible defence. Imagine if this particular person here, on making his complaint to police about the fact that he was unlawfully detained, imagine the trials and the tribulations that he would have had to have undergone to get the police to look at this particular matter. The matter is going to the district courts. Why? What they really mean is they cannot afford to have the precedent set. They cannot afford to have you understand that there are very, very limited occasions in which security staff, and we've seen the rise of security staff in public shopping centres and in many of public places, as to what they can and can't do. And in this instance, he's had to go through the through the court case himself at expense in order to prove his innocence. I myself also made a complaint to police that security guard damaged the camera mount on that camera during that particular occasion, and assaulted myself as well as a number of other people a number of times, and the police did nothing about it. Absolutely nothing about it. And one of the last write-offs that I had in relation to that is the police said that they believed that the security guard had a defence. And again, what I highlight to you is the precedent that's set here is that should be considered is where does the defence, where should that be determined? And that is one in court. So there we go. That's a bit of a look at an insight as a story, a very important story, and just a walkthrough. It's not so much what they're telling you, it's about what they're not telling you. What are they really meaning? They don't want you to know this information. So at any time, if you're conducting yourself in a calm and a respectful manner, then there is no, as we can see from this particular case, there was no right to detain, therefore there is no right to use any force. That is a direct quote from Judge Linda Black. I'm Lindsay from Freedom Media WA. This is the first of the What Are They Really Meaning streams, and we look forward to bringing you more streams of this format. Thank you for watching.